What is up, everybody? Brett here, coming back at you with some Total War Warhammer 2 multiplayer action. This is going to be a 3v3 battle I played last night. It's Hellfire Pass, a unique map in the campaign as well as on multiplayer. It does have a single high ground position and a low ground position. So we went with the Dwarves. When I jumped into this game, the other 5 players were already pretty much ready, and I saw somebody playing Dwarves, and I was like, that's it. I got to be the High King. He was rocking Ungrim, and I was like, I'm going to bring Thorgrim, and we are going to hold the center. Let me put it in slow-mo for you guys before things start kicking off, because they start kicking off pretty fast. I took up the center position. Not that solid of a Dwarven front line. 2 Longbeards with their encouragement auras and their immunity psychology to hold down my center, with 3 groups of miners with blasting charges placed a little bit out front, giving them an opportunity to throw those blasting charges. Behind them, 3 units of rangers. I have them in kind of a spaghetti formation, very thin. I anticipated the Skaven player and perhaps even the greenskin player would bring a lot of artillery, so I didn't want them to get one shot by something like a plague claw catapult. I have a backline of miners mixed with slayers, the strategy I like to employ, mixing in very cheap miners with the very expensive slayers, letting the miners take the hits. My artillery are made up of 2 bolt throwers, very good at counter artillery skirmishing, and you'll see here we're already taking out some of the Skaven's warp lightning cannons with my bolt throwers, and my single cannon, which on this map, on this position, is able to hit nearly the entire battlefield at this range. I have 2 runesmiths on my flanks, and I can deploy them, as part of my allies' armies, and use their 3 runes to boost armor, their defensive stats, as well as to do some damage with the Oath of Wrath and Ruin. And holding down the center here, the High King himself, Thorgrim Grudgebearer. I took away a few of his abilities. I don't think High King is very necessary. Thorgrim, for most of the battle, will be in high leadership. You'll see here he starts with 108 leadership, which is just enormous. He's borderline unbreakable for the majority of the battle that matters. He does do magic damage, which is worth noting. I took Stand Your Ground, and as well as his new ability, Oath of Vengeance, which lowers ally units' melee defense by 27. It's kind of like a dot. You can kind of just click on a unit, and lower their defense. I cast a kind of preemptive Rune of Wrath and Ruin here on these spearmen, just kind of discouraging them from coming into my front lines. And they're going to focus more on my Dark Elf ally. Let's see, what else? I took one more ability on Thorgrim here. Let's see if we can't show that off. The Great Book of Grudges. So many grudges will be settled today. Here, giving +9 melee attack to all my allies in this range. The Karakadrin player took 1 runesmith as well as Ungrim Iron Fist with his power mohawk. Here, rocking his gigantic great axe, which has its own lore. I love all the lore pieces for all the hero units in this game. He decided to take multiple cannons, 3 cannons, and an organ gun. So his huge amount of artillery is also going to help us dumpster all of the counter artillery of the Skaven. He's got his slayers in the back here. We were somewhat worried about vanguard deployment. Skaven and orcs can very easily vanguard in these back corners here. And having the high ground is nice, but the low ground is so deep that the advantage isn't really there. The best advantage you get is from having your, let's say we had Thunderers and we put them on this downslope, we would be able to shoot over the heads of our own units. But in the same way, units on the downslope can shoot over the heads of their front lines as well. So it appears like we have this huge positioning advantage, but on this map it's usually proven not to be so. Now unfortunately, our dwarf ally went with so much artillery that they're going to be quite compromised when they get rushed by all of this infantry and cavalry of the orcs and Skaven players. Lots of forest goblin spider riders, lots of low tier slaves for the Skaven, with a couple storm vermin held in reserve, as well as black orcs. and they're sneaking up these units. They're probably invisible right now with their stalk mechanics. The nasty skulkers, for those of you who aren't familiar, these little hooded goblins with their daggers. This Regiment of Renown Night Goblin unit. This is the unbreakable version. I can't remember if that's the 8-peak loonies or not. For some reason that unit's always been messed up with the name. It just says basic Night Goblins. They're bringing forward some slingers here to kind of counter skirmish, but Karakadrin does have a front line of quarrelers here, which is going to do work against all of these lightly armored units. Unfortunately, the Night Goblins do have silver shields, so they're going to absorb that fire nicely. Wurzag for the orcs, standing in the back with all of these black orcs, as well as, let's see, he has one special unit here I wanted to showcase. Here we go, the Crimson Killers. And I think this is the organ gun that's going to be ripping into them, as well as the Deathglow Bombardiers. These are a very scary unit, and they're going to stick around to the end of this battle. And I was prioritizing them with my artillery until I realized just how much artillery was on the field for the Skaven. And I pretty much nuked this Warp Lightning Cannon with my bolt throwers. Luckily, we have the superior counter-artillery skirmishing. The Skaven player was moving one of his catapults onto this very defensive position here, hoping to get better shots, but we'll see if that's the case. We have a standard Prince here for the High Elf player with his Swordmasters of Hoeth. He's just going to be on a horse, no dragon for him. Lots of archers, Sisters of Avalorn, Silver Helms held in reserve, a couple chevrons on them as well. It's an interesting choice. And a front line of basic spearmen heading into our Dark Elf allies' army. He decided to bring the Supreme Sorceress of Shadow up on a Dark Pegasus. A good choice. You want the mobility and the option to escape. The speed is excellent, 105 speed. He brought quite a few Regiments of Renown, which I'm happy to showcase here. He brought the Witch Elf Regiment of Renown, the Sisters of Singing Doom, which do have terror. They are a terror-causing unit. They have Frenzy, and Murderous Mastery, I believe, is something that they possess. Let's see, we also have the Hellebroni, the Dreadspear Regiment of Renown. They have poison attacks, and just excellent stats as a rank 9 infantry unit. Very good at holding the center or protecting your back line. And I want to say there was another unit that I was quite excited to show, and here we go. That is the Blackguard of Nagaron, a unit that I haven't shown on my channel yet, and they are the Halberd, very elite, heavily armored, anti-large specialists of the Dark Elf army. And they are in an excellent position here in the forest, protecting them from missile damage, and really protecting this entire rightmost flank of ours. So the lines are engaging, and let me go ahead and put it in full speed. Here we go. Thorgrim's going to mix it up with this noble. This noble here is designed for anti-large combat, and Thorgrim up on his throne here is a large target. So we'll see how he does. I'm using all of my runes here, and you'll see I pop them. You'll see this AoE giving me armor, giving me standard 22% damage resistance to all of these units, which is quite solid. I was able to get off most of my charges in the opening salvos here. The opponent is trying to counter skirmish us with our artillery. Fortunately for us, ours is just much more accurate. And we're using some of our artillery to try and poke down these black orcs, the Crimson Killers. And once we realized that there wasn't going to be any backline pressure, there were no vanguarded units, I'm going to bring forward my Slayers and my Miners to support this frontline fight. Yeah, here we go. There's Lord Scrope, and he's using his spells here to try and damage this Dwarven blob, really punish it. But the Dwarves are known for their magic resistance, so they're going to do fine here.
Kill them!
Love the straight frontline battle. And it's looking a little choppy here for me. Hopefully this looks better for you guys. It certainly wasn't like this in the game. If I zoom out a little bit, maybe it gets a little bit better. But we have a commanding position here with our Rangers, and we're just going to be picking our targets, taking shots at some of the units as they retreat, focusing down very important units like Swordmasters of Hoeth, Black Orcs. We want to provide some overwatch to our Longbeards. They are engaged in battle with these black orcs, and that's a rough engagement for them.
It is an order.
Black orcs are made to tear up armor, and the Longbeards are mostly made to handle combat with lower tier squishy units, and at that they excel. We are bringing in some of our Slayers and Miners to help our ally.
Ready to strike.
They kind of have their Quarrelers maybe a little too far forward. They're not getting full use out of them. And some of their artillery is offline. It's been compromised by some of these spear units, as well as the Forest Goblin Spider Riders. You have to have enough units to cover your artillery. And if you don't, it might have been smart for him to deploy with me, and we could sort of commingle our defenses, and in that way protect our guys. I'm holding these Slayers in reserve on purpose. I wasn't still 100% trusting that there wasn't some Death Runners or something in these corners, but and if anything managed to get through, I would just send the Slayers forward to kind of plug that gap. Thorgrim managed to beat the brakes off of this noble. Sent him running. I'm going to call him back in a second. I don't want him overextending, chasing a much faster unit. I'm going to bring him back to the fight. Probably rear charge these black orcs in just a moment. Morgan's Mangy Marauders here for the orc player, Regiment of Renown. They used to have an armor sundering ranged attack that they no longer possess. Now they just have really high armor piercing values for their particular unit type. The High Elf player got crushed. The Hargonet Executioners are perfect at dealing with pure spearmen armies, and even the White Lions wouldn't be enough to save them. You'll see there, hopefully in the background, you got a chance to see some of the Vortex spells going off from the Dark Elf Supreme Sorceress. She was casting Pit of Shades and things for most of the game, and she's going to get back here into this Plague Claw Catapult. And we used our artillery. We focused one by one by one, and we almost single-handedly took out all of this artillery. And I think at this point, my cannon here up on this position, still safe, still firing, 75 kills, is now starting to take down the models of the Plague Claw Catapult. Unfortunately, Ungrim has been overrun, and he's going to get in it with these spiders and with these black orcs. He is very good against Wurzag. If he can stand and fight, he should be able to take him down. He's made to kill large targets. He's made to kill armored targets. Wurzag on his Spleen Rippa, the boar mount he possesses, is still no match for Ungrim. He does do decent armor piercing damage. We won our front line pretty handily, so now we're able to pull some of our reserves off to help defend this flank, so we can continue to fire with our artillery and get all of this ammo used from our rangers. And you'll see here we're almost out of ammo, which is a good thing. And we'll start pulling these guys to this position soon. I wanted to help defeat this prince, so I focused on that a little bit, hoping to cause some kind of a rout. Didn't really realize these were the Hellebroni. The Hellebroni are very capable of dealing with a low HP Prince unit. They are anti-large, and their poison does lower his stats. So we're going to be bringing our units back from rout. Our miners were never meant to hold forever in the way that the Longbeards do, but they are going to block up some of these black orcs from getting into our remaining forces. Now we're causing a bit of a pit fight here around Thorgrim. Lord Skroak gets in the mix. Lord Skroak is surprisingly dangerous in melee for how he appears. He's a little blind plague monk rat, but he does have a ton of magic damage, and he's using it here in coordination with the Greenskins magic to weaken us, to buff them. We're popping all of our buffs, all of our runes that we have available to us to keep up these Slayers, who are excellent in a pit like this. They don't want to fight black orcs, they're too heavily armored, and these are the Crimson Killers. These guys are absolute terrors with their dual-wielding great axes. But since we've run out of ammunition on our rangers, we're going to bring them into melee. Now, the Carrickadren player is reforming his ranks. At this point, he's got some units I wish he would throw into the battle with us. I would hold Ungrim in reserve just so that he doesn't die and we suffer that leadership penalty. I'm shooting the remaining ammunition that I have left off of these rangers, trying to take advantage of the lack of armor lack of range defense on these Plaguemont Censer Bearers. These are quite a powerful unit, and I made kind of a little defensive wing here with this around this Runesmith and these Longbeards. It's going to protect us from getting flanked. Bringing these miners back in, taking a lot of damage from these little rat boy slingers. They don't do a lot of damage, but there's so many of them. It's kind of an overwhelming fire there. Thorgrim's still in the battle, constantly using his stand your ground to provide leadership and melee defense. And whenever I get the chance, I am putting his debuffs onto the Crimson Killers or whatever remaining Black Orcs are still here. Using the Oath of Vengeance, minus 27 melee defense, to make his most powerful units as squishy as I can. A little bit of a mistake here, maybe, putting the Runesmith directly into the front lines with these armor-piercing boys, but we do have two of them. We have another Runesmith here holding the side, but our opponents detached some armor-piercing units in the form of Black Orcs and Nasty Skulkers to kind of break up these Longbeards, and unfortunately he's going to break. The miners are still fighting. They are fighting slave spears, so they'll do great against them. They do have 80 armor despite being the lowest tier unit for the Dwarven roster. Cannon is still online, and I've just been focusing quite hard on picking the best targets for it. You can see it's up to 116 kills, and that was with focusing artillery for most of the battle. Thorgrim's still in the thick of it. Stand your ground is popped. The Wah goes up for the Orcs, which is a really powerful synergistic ability for a 3v3 battle. Giving your entire army, even the Skavens, the Wah, honestly, it's a little bit broken. Giving those buffs that are pretty much just for the Orcs, but giving them to the Skaven as well, that's quite powerful. One of our allies' cannons back online, and it's going to be firing into the flanks here. I didn't notice that when I was playing it, but that's a nice little position he has here. Thorgrim is going to break. He was focused down heavily by Storm Vermin, Black Orcs, Lord Scrope, so it's kind of a miracle he survived as long as he did. But Thorgrim's one of those units whose innate leadership is so high that he's not just going to stay broken. So I run this Runesmith to try and run some kind of interception, but mostly to get these runes off, to provide him with enough damage resistance and even more armor, putting him up to 150 armor. That's huge. And that's going to prevent Wurzag from straight up killing him. And thankfully he's fleeing in the direction of my allies' regrouped forces, because now he's running Lord Scrope, or Wurzag rather, directly into a front line of Longbeards with great weapons, and my Runesmith and Ungrim. So that's nice, that's quite nice. So my routing Runesmith and Thorgrim should rally right at the last second. Some of my units here are going off the map. That's rough. That was 3 units that just ran away. Cannon's still firing. It's a miracle. Now, this blob fight here could have gone a little differently had my allies, kind of reinforced me. We got overwhelmed by Black Orcs, unfortunately. So now there's another pocket going off. This is my ranger units that were chasing down that prince. They've been brought back into the fight. They're not going to have a good day against these Black Orcs. These Longbeards really need to get in here. But I think my allies focused on microing his remaining cannons. Ungrim's back in it, doing work. Luckily, the Black Orcs' leadership fails and they run off, allowing us to chase a bit. Now Thorgrim rallied. I think I have both of my Runesmiths are now rallied, so we're going to pull them together. I pull my cannon crew off my cannon. They're out of ammunition, and at this point they're just going to be kind of a tar pit unit. Their stats aren't terrible, so just having them intermixed with my remaining better units going to provide some value. I'm using my most beat up units here to chase off these Black Orcs. The last thing we want is a couple of these bad boys coming back at the last second and getting into my back line. making sure to chase them off. You gotta do it. So I want to reinforce wherever my allies are. Argoneth Executioners, 13 of them coming back. Some Dark Shards with shields. Unfortunately with no ammunition. We're going to need these guys to rally. They have a lot of ammunition. And range units are quite powerful with ammunition in the late game. And there they go, they rally. The Dark Elf player, smart here, is going to chase off Wurzag. We don't need him casting any more spells. And I'm going to be cycling my runes here on my runesmiths. One of them goes down there. You will be missed. Thorgrim goes back into the battle. He's shaken, he's broken, and he's going to run. He picked up a few more kills there, I believe. Tanked a few more hits. Still at 500 HP, which is enough to make a difference. At this point, I was quite worried about our shape here because apparently the Skaven players still had summons. So Clan Rats get into the back line. They can chase off this cannon, which was able to fire. They can chase off these Longbeards, which we desperately needed. Okay, so my guy did not die. He just turned into a coward and ran. That's going in the book. This runesmith is broken, but he's not shattered, so he can come back. Thorgrim also, I don't think he died. Yeah, he's broken. He's going to try and come back. Storm Vermin here, very elite infantry left for the Skaven and great health for this late in the battlefield. 51 models is quite a few. We're hoping they stop chasing so that we can rally. The leadership on the field left for our enemy is this Night Goblin Shaman who's in the mix. Where'd he go? So tiny. There he is. He's providing encouragement to these Skaven units. Fortunately, Ungrim just went down, but Skrolk is broken as well, so this is coming down to the wire. Blackguard of Nagaron rally at the last second, and we still have a few units here that we can wrap around Thorgrim and make another little engagement. Hopefully these cannon crew comes back with 16 dwarves we can bring back. And Supreme Sorceress using that mobility I talked about in the beginning to hunt down and slay Skrolk. And she's back up in the air, nice and safe. These Dark Shards are able to fire, and they've racked up quite a few kills since the last time we saw them. Their damage is very, very heavy armor piercing, which is going to be great at taking down something squishy like the Night Goblin Shaman. And once he starts to break as the last leadership for the enemy forces, that should be it. And you see the dwarves here were coming back for one last push. So great game. Good teamwork on both sides. The WA synergy was quite powerful with all the low tier Skaven units on the field, giving them huge melee attack bonuses. One of these Plagueclaw catapults did a ton of damage to us, and Skrolk with his casting does a lot too. And even this number is a bit misrepresenting, because all the summons he no doubt had throughout the course of this battle, if you took into account the amount of kills that they had and the amount of damage that they soaked, I'm sure this number would be exponentially higher. And these Storm Vermin and Plague Monk Censer Bearers, these kills are not on Skavens, they're not on Goblins, they're against Dwarf units, probably Miners, or even, Dread Spears. So these numbers are not artificially inflated. These are excellent kills on the Storm Vermin. Our Dark Elf ally did work with these Hargoneth Executioners. The Sisters of Singing Doom look like they fought to the end. Lots of good kills on the Dark Shards. MVP, definitely the Sorceress, using her mobility to shut down artillery and to pick off fleeing lords throughout the battle. Let's see here. The High Elf player, Swordmasters of Hoeth, at least one of them kind of got their value. We focused down another one quite hard while he was standing in the forest. The Noble tried to go up against Thorgrim and got slammed. On paper, that's maybe a good match, but Thorgrim's stats are just so beefy. It's easy to underestimate him. He just looks like he doesn't do damage. He just looks very tanky, but he does a lot of damage. His weapon strength is quite high. Sisters of Avalorn, unfortunately they look like they did not generate the value they were hoping to. Maybe Dark Shards took them down. Maybe the Dark Elf player got a good Pit of Shades or something similar on them. The Orc player, Wurzag, got a lot of kills. Black Orcs, man, the numbers on these Black Orcs. Even the Nasty Skulkers. These are one of my favorite Orc units. They're very cheap. I want to say they're 500 gold. They're heavy armor piercing. If you're fighting Dwarves, you bring Nasty Skulkers. Their stalk makes it so that they're able to get into melee range without taking tons of artillery or missile damage. And then once they get in there and pop their slow buffs, they're smoke bombs, I believe they're called. Dwarves can't run away, and then they're stuck fighting these very cheap, heavy armor piercing units. Forest Goblin Spider Riders, no doubt, did their flanking, were able to disrupt our Dwarven brethren here. Ungrim got a lot of kills, that's to be expected. He is unbreakable. He will fight to the end. Slayers always get kills. The Organ Gun, 206 kills. A lot of that's on cheap Skaven units, no doubt, as well as probably the numbers on these cannons here. However, I mean, kills are kills past a certain point. There's no such thing as a wasted shot if it gets kills in this game. I don't believe he was helping me take out those artillery, maybe past the first little bit of the game. The Quarrelers did very well, Longbeards did very well, and let's check out how I was able to do. Got a lot of value even out of my low tier miners. These are 325 gold, I believe. So for them to get 96, 58 kills, that's excellent. The miners with blasting charges, same thing. I think they're 400, just a little bit more expensive, maybe a little more than that, than these regular miners. Longbeards held the line as they were meant to do. Yeah, Slayers always paying for themselves. I'm never unhappy when I bring Slayers. Rangers got to unload all their ammunition. They picked up, 300 kills between them. It's quite solid. And they weren't just firing at Skaven slaves. They were firing at Black Orcs. They were firing at Lore Masters of Hoeth and getting us value that way. Bolt throwers, very cheap. They're almost the same cost as a Ranger, I believe. I want to say they're in the 500 range. And they were able to destroy all of these very expensive artillery pieces for the Skaven. These Warp Lightning Cannons, I think, are 1,000 gold apiece. And I'm going to attribute our success to these very cheap bolt thrower units shutting down these Warp Lightning Cannons. Had they been able to fire for most of the game, the Supreme Sorcerer would have been wrecked. At some point, the Skaven player would have realized she's just flying around, hovering in the air, and she's like the squishiest target in the world. And they would have just crushed her with these Warp Lightning Cannons. So it was a necessity that we took them off the battlefield. A Black Dragon, I don't even know if I noticed this Black Dragon. I'm sure I saw it while I was playing, but I have no doubt that the High Elf player was using their ridiculous archers and the ridiculous damage that is of the Sisters of Avalorn to crush that Black Dragon. So yeah, guys, and our cannon, which didn't stop firing for the entire battle, was awesome as well. So okay, guys, that's been it for me today. That was a very fun 3v3. I'm going to try and get some more like that up on the channel. For those of you who follow Total War and the updates that have been coming out, I am super hyped for the Vampire Coast. And today, as I'm recording this, they just did a stream on Twitch to showcase the new Heinrich Himmler starting positions and some of the new features they've added to the Vampire Celts. And I'm very excited to jump into that, as well as Lokir Fellhart, I believe his name is. Another, we can call him a pirate. He's more of a corsair in the Dark Elf lore. He commands the Black Arcs, the huge floating fortresses of the Dark Elves. So hopefully they've revamped that whole system, because it was pretty wonky in campaign. So very exciting times to be a fan of the series. And for those of you who watch this and maybe you don't own the game, I hope you get into it. It's kind of an expensive hobby, but I love it. And I don't think anyone who's ever played this game hasn't loved it as well. So without too much further ado, guys, my name has been Brett. My channel is Good Talk Gaming, and if you haven't subscribed, please do. I'm a small channel. I notice every subscription, and I appreciate them all. So that's it, guys. Thank you very much for watching. Have a good day, and I will see you in the next one.